They called her Barren. Broken. A cursed Omega unworthy of bearing an Alpha's children. When Alpha King Theron Ashcroft publicly rejected her 5 years ago, he did it with a smile, claiming her empty womb was an insult to his bloodline. The entire Wolf Nation watched as she was stripped of her title and cast out into exile. They thought that was the end of Lyra Moonwhisper's story. They were wrong. The invitation arrived on black parchment, sealed with the royal crest. You are cordially invited to the mating ball of Alpha King Theron Ashcroft and his new Luna. It reeked of cruelty, a final humiliation, forcing the rejected Omega to witness her replacement's triumph. But when the ballroom doors opened that night, it wasn't a broken, barren woman who walked through. It was a queen flanked by 2 young boys with eyes that burned like liquid gold, Alpha Heirs, unmistakably powerful, impossibly hers. And behind her, moving like a shadow made flesh, was something the wolf world had thought extinct, a black Luna named Avriel, whose very presence made the ancient bloodlines tremble. But before we dive in, I need to ask you something that truly matters to me. If you've enjoyed my stories, or if you're here hoping this one will move you, please don't leave without subscribing. Without your subscription, YouTube buries everything I create. The people searching for stories that make them feel something, stories about resilience, love, impossible choices, they'll never find them. Because the algorithm decided I wasn't worth showing. I'm not asking for money. Just 30 seconds to hit that subscribe button so others can discover these stories too. I pour everything I have into every word, every character, every chapter. And knowing I could reach someone who desperately needs it but won't because you didn't click, that genuinely breaks my heart. Please subscribe. It costs you nothing, but to me, it means someone believes these stories matter. Now, let's continue. The letter had been delivered by a royal courier who looked at Lyra's modest cottage with barely concealed disgust. 5 years in the borderlands had weathered her hands and tanned her skin, but it hadn't broken her. Not anymore. She opened the black envelope with steady fingers, already knowing what it contained. The elegant script confirmed it. Alpha King Theron Ashcroft requests the honor of your presence at his mating ball, where he will officially claim his new Luna. The ceremony will take place on the winter solstice at the Crystal Palace. Your attendance is expected. Expected. Not invited. Expected. Lyra set the invitation on her kitchen table, where her twin sons, Kale and Darius, sat eating breakfast. At 4 years old, they already radiated power that made visiting wolves instinctively bow their heads. Their eyes, pure molten gold, a color only seen in the most dominant alpha bloodlines, tracked her every movement with unsettling intelligence. Mama? Kale, the elder by 3 minutes, tilted his head. Why does that paper make you smell like anger? Even at their age, the boys could read emotions through scent better than most adult wolves. It was one of many gifts that marked them as extraordinary. Lyra smoothed his dark hair, so like hers, yet carrying an otherworldly shimmer that caught the light like starfire. Because someone from our past wants to play a game. But this time, we're going to change the rules. Darius, quieter but equally perceptive, frowned at the parchment. The man who hurt you? Yes, Lyra admitted. There was no point in lying to children who could scent deception like blood in water. Then we should go, Kale declared, his small jaw set with determination that would have been amusing if it weren't backed by genuine alpha authority. And show him he was wrong. A low, amused sound came from the doorway. Avriel emerged from the shadows, literally from the shadows, her body materializing from darkness itself. The black Luna was devastating to behold, midnight skin that seemed to absorb light, silver eyes that glowed like twin moons, and an aura of ancient power that made even Lyra's formidable sons go still with respect. She wore her usual attire, flowing black robes that moved like living smoke, and silver jewelry that chimed with a sound like distant bells. Her hair, long and white as fresh snow, contrasted sharply with her dark skin. When she moved, reality seemed to bend slightly around her, as if she existed partially in another dimension. "Are you certain you want to return to that place?" Avriel's voice was silk over steel, each word carefully weighted. "The last time you stood in that palace, they destroyed you." "They tried," Lyra corrected, meeting her guardian's gaze. "But I survived. I found you. I bore these impossible children that everyone swore I could never have. And now Theron wants to parade his new Luna in front of me, thinking I'm still the broken Omega he discarded." She smiled, and it was sharp enough to draw blood. "Let's show him exactly how wrong he was." Avriel studied her for a long moment, those silver eyes seeming to peer into Lyra's very soul. Finally, she nodded. "Then we prepare. If you're going to walk back into that viper's nest, you'll do it as what you truly are, not what they tried to make you." "And what am I?" Lyra asked softly. "Luna's sovereign," Avriel replied. "One of the rarest bloodlines in existence. Your power was suppressed, chained by the rejection bond before it could fully manifest. But these years in exile, bearing your sons, surviving on your own strength, you've been breaking those chains without even realizing it." Lyra felt a flutter in her chest, like something caged finally testing the bars of its prison. Can it be undone completely? The suppression. "We're about to find out," Avriel said with a dangerous smile. "Because walking back into his presence, into the place where he severed your bond, that will be the final test. You'll either shatter completely or ascend." The next 3 days were unlike anything Lyra had experienced. Avriel began training her in earnest, teaching her to access the power that had been locked away. The rejection didn't just hurt you emotionally, Avriel explained as they stood in the forest clearing behind the cottage. It created a spiritual wound. When a true mate severs the bond before it fully forms, it's like cutting off a limb before it can grow. The phantom pain remains, but so does the potential for regeneration. "And my sons?" Lyra asked, watching Kale and Darius practice their shifting nearby. Even at 4, they could manage partial transformations, claws, fangs, the golden eyes blazing brighter. "Your sons are proof that you were never barren," Avriel said. Luna sovereigns are notoriously difficult to conceive with. They only bear children when the bloodline demands it, when the next generation needs to be stronger than the last. Theron was never meant to father your children. His bloodline was too weak, too diluted by politics and pride. "Then who?" Lyra stopped, understanding dawning. "You're saying I conceived them alone?" "Not alone. By will. By necessity. By the raw power of a Luna sovereign who refused to die." Avriel's smile was fierce. "It's happened only a handful of times in history. Children born of pure lunar power, carrying no father's bloodline to dilute their strength. That's why they're so powerful. They're yours entirely." The revelation should have been impossible to believe. But Lyra had learned that impossible was simply another word for rare. She looked at her sons, her miracles, and felt a surge of fierce pride. "Teach me," she said to Avriel. "Teach me everything." For 3 days, Avriel guided her through exercises that were part meditation, part combat training, part spiritual awakening. Lyra learned to tap into the well of power that had been sealed inside her. She practiced projecting authority, channeling her will into tangible force, and most importantly, shielding her true strength until the moment she chose to reveal it. At the ball, they'll expect the Omega they remember, Real instructed. Timid. Broken. Let them think that at first. Let Theron believe his cruelty worked. Then, when he's comfortable in his superiority, show him the truth. On the third evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in shades of blood and gold, Lyra stood before a mirror in a gown that Real had procured from shadow markets that existed between worlds. It was deep emerald, the color of ancient forests, cut to showcase strength rather than fragility. The bodice was reinforced with silver threading that formed protective runes, and the skirt flowed like water. Her sons wore matching suits of charcoal gray, looking far older than their years. Real had braided silver charms into their hair, protection sigils that would shield them from hostile magic. "You look like a queen, Mama," Darius said softly. "You look like yourself," Kale corrected. Finally, Lyra met her own gaze in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the trembling, apologetic Omega. In her place stood someone who had survived hell and emerged tempered like steel. "Let's go show them what exile creates," she said. The journey to the Crystal Palace took 3 days by carriage. Lyra traveled in a coach that bore no crest, no markings, just a simple black vehicle that drew curious stares from every pack they passed. Word spread fast through wolf territories. Whispers traveled faster than horses. Something powerful is moving toward the capital. They stopped at an inn on the second night, in a small pack territory that straddled the border between the Borderlands and the Central Kingdoms. The innkeeper's eyes widened when Kale and Darius walked in, their golden eyes sweeping the common room with predatory awareness. "Alpha pups," the innkeeper breathed. "I didn't know anyone of rank was passing through. My apologies for the humble accommodations." "The accommodations are fine," Lyra said calmly. "We require 3 rooms and meals for 4. 4. The innkeeper looked around, counting. "I see only you and the boys." Real materialized from the shadows near the fireplace, and the innkeeper stumbled backward with a cry of shock. Several patrons dropped their drinks. A young wolf in the corner shifted involuntarily in panic. "Merciful moon," the innkeeper gasped. "A black Luna. They're real. They're actually real." "Very real," Real confirmed, her silver eyes gleaming with amusement. "And very protective of my charge. I trust that won't be a problem." "No problem at all, honored one." The innkeeper practically tripped over himself, backing away. "The finest rooms. The best food. Whatever you need." As they ate dinner in a private dining room, Lyra noticed wolves gathering outside, staring through the windows with a mixture of fear and awe. News would reach the capital before they did. Theron would know she was coming and that she wasn't alone. "Let them look," Real said, not bothering to lower her voice. "Let them tell stories. By the time we arrive, the Alpha King will be sufficiently unsettled." Kale grinned, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. "Good. He should be afraid." "Not afraid," Lyra corrected gently, "but aware. Aware that the woman he discarded is not the woman who returns." On the third day, they crested the final hill and saw the Crystal Palace gleaming in the distance. It sat atop a mountain of white stone, its towers catching the light like a crown of ice. Lyra's heart clenched at the sight. She had once dreamed of living there as Theron's Luna, of raising children in those halls, of being loved. How naive she had been. Second thoughts. Real asked quietly. "No," Lyra said. "But I'm remembering why I need to do this. Not for revenge, but for closure. For my sons. So they can see that their mother wasn't destroyed by rejection. She was reforged by it. When they arrived at the palace gates, the guards didn't recognize her. Why would they? The Lyra they remembered had been thin, pale, trembling, a rejected Omega with her head bowed in shame. The woman who stepped from the carriage wore strength like armor. Her hair, once limp and lifeless, now cascaded in glossy waves. But most striking were her eyes, no longer downcast and submissive, but blazing with quiet fury. Then her sons emerged. Cale and Darius moved with predatory grace unusual for children so young. They wore matching suits of charcoal gray, and their golden eyes swept the crowd with an authority that made seasoned warriors shift uncomfortably. The royal guards could sense it. These children radiated alpha power that rivaled their own king. One guard, braver or more foolish than the rest, stepped forward. "State your business." Lady Lyra Moowhisper, Lyra said clearly. "Invited by the Alpha King himself. These are my sons, Cale and Darius. And this," she gestured as Avriel stepped from the carriage, "is my guardian and companion, Avriel." But it was Avriel who made the entire courtyard go silent. The Black Luna stepped from the carriage like night itself given form. Legends spoke of the Black Lunas, ancient protectors who bonded with wolves of extraordinary destiny, creatures of shadow and moonlight who served as both guardian and judge. They had been thought extinct for 3 centuries, their last confirmed sighting during the War of the Broken Moon. Yet here one stood, silver eyes fixed on the palace, her presence alone a declaration that something momentous was about to unfold. "Impossible," one guard whispered. "Alert the king," another hissed urgently. "Alert him now. And summon the Council of Elders. They need to see this." As they were escorted through the palace grounds, Lyra noticed how wolves stopped and stared. Some bowed their heads instinctively to Avriel. Others couldn't look away from Cale and Darius, recognizing power when they saw it. Whispers followed their procession like a wake of troubled water. "Who is she?" Those children, their eyes. "Imperial gold, I swear it. But that's impossible, the first bloodline. A Black Luna. After 300 years. They were given rooms to refresh themselves before the ball. Lyra's chamber was opulent, far grander than she expected for an unwanted guest. Perhaps Theron wanted her comfortable so her inevitable humiliation would be more complete. Or perhaps he simply hadn't thought about her at all, and this was standard protocol. As she changed into her gown and prepared herself, Avriel appeared beside her like smoke condensing. "The palace is in chaos," the Black Luna reported. "Half the council is demanding you be expelled before the ceremony. The other half wants to interrogate you about the children. And Theron?" She smiled coldly. "Theron is pacing his chambers like a caged wolf, trying to decide if you're a threat or an opportunity." "What do you think I am?" Lyra asked. "Neither," Avriel said. "You're a reckoning." The ballroom was a cathedral of crystal and light. Chandeliers dripped with diamonds, walls gleamed with polished marble, and floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the moonlit mountains beyond. The Wolf Nation's elite had gathered alphas in formal attire, Lunas dripping with jewels, warriors standing at attention, and courtiers whispering behind fans and wine glasses. Lyra waited in the antechamber with her sons and Avriel, listening to the orchestra play, hearing the murmur of hundreds of conversations. Her heart hammered, but her hands were steady. "Ready?" Avriel asked. "Yes," Lyra said. She looked down at Cale and Darius. "Remember what we discussed. Polite. Controlled. Don't let anyone provoke you into showing your full power." "Unless they threaten Mama," Cale said. "Then we show everything," Darius finished. They were so young, yet so fierce. Lyra's heart swelled with love and pride. The herald's voice rang out, Lady Lyra Moowhisper, accompanied by her sons and honored guardian. The ballroom fell silent when they entered. Every head turned. The orchestra stumbled mid-note. Conversations died mid-word. The sudden quiet was so complete that Lyra could hear the rustle of her gown against the marble floor. At the far end of the hall, standing on the royal dais, Alpha King Theron Ashcroft froze. He was exactly as Lyra remembered, tall, golden-haired, devastatingly handsome in the way of wolves blessed by genetics and unchallenged power. He wore ceremonial armor of silver and white, the crown of the Alpha King resting on his brow. Beside him, a beautiful she-wolf in a flowing white gown radiated smug satisfaction. His new Luna, the woman who could allegedly give him what Lyra could not, heirs. But it was Theron's face that Lyra focused on. She watched shock flicker across his features, followed by confusion, then calculation. His eyes, blue as winter ice, swept over her, clearly noting the changes. Then his gaze dropped to the boys flanking her, and something dangerous flashed in his expression. "Well," he said, his voice carrying across the stunned ballroom with the resonance of alpha command. "Lyra Moo Whisper. You actually came. How unexpected." He descended the dais steps with calculated grace, his new Luna following like a shadow. "And you brought children." The way he said it, children, dripped with false warmth and very real venom, as if they were props in a performance rather than living beings. "Tell me," Theron continued, stopping halfway across the ballroom floor, "did you adopt them to fill the void? To pretend you're capable of what nature denied you? I must admit, it's almost touching." The Barren Omega playing mother to some orphaned pups. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Several wolves looked away, embarrassed by the cruelty even as they hungered for the drama. Lyra felt Kale and Darius tense beside her, felt their power beginning to rise in response to the insult. She placed a gentle hand on each of their shoulders, calming them with a touch. "These are my sons," Lyra said, her voice clear and unwavering. She walked forward, her boys matching her step for step, of real a silent shadow at her back. "Kale and Darius Moo Whisper. Born 3 years ago in the borderlands where you exiled me. Born of my blood, my body, my power." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Theron's face went white, then red with anger. "Impossible," he snarled, his composure cracking. "You're barren." Every healer confirmed it. Every test. Every healer you chose confirmed what you wanted to hear, Lyra interrupted, and the authority in her voice made several wolves, including Theron's new Luna, take an involuntary step backward. "Tell me, Theron, did you ever wonder why those healers all came from your personally selected inner circle? Why I was never allowed to consult independent physicians?" Theron's jaw clenched. "You're lying. You must have taken a lover in exile. Whelpsome bastards." "Watch your tongue," Kale said, and though his voice was young, it carried a weight that made the chandeliers tremble. "You speak of our mother with respect, or you don't speak at all." The entire ballroom went silent. A 4-year-old child had just given an order to an Alpha King, and the Alpha King had stopped speaking. Theron stared at Kale, and Lyra watched understanding begin to dawn in his eyes. He was seeing what she'd hoped he would see, the golden eyes that marked ancient bloodlines, the posture that spoke of inherent dominance, the power that radiated from her sons like heat from a forge. Their eyes, someone in the crowd whispered. "Imperial gold. The first bloodline. But that's been extinct for..." Theron's new Luna grabbed his arm, her perfectly composed face showing cracks of panic. "Theron, those children, what they're implying, it's not possible. The imperial bloodline died out. Everyone knows that." Apparently, Avril spoke for the first time, her voice echoing with otherworldly resonance that made wolves cover their ears. "Everyone knows very little." She stepped forward, and shadows coalesced around her like living things. The temperature in the ballroom dropped 10 degrees. Frost crept across the marble floor, spreading from where she stood. I am of real, Black Luna of the Shadow Moon Covenant. We were thought extinct because we choose to be forgotten until a worthy charge calls us back into the world. Her silver eyes fixed on Theron like a predator sighting prey. And this woman, whom you cast aside like refuse, called me from the deep places with her will to survive alone. Do you understand what that means? Theron swallowed hard. Even from across the room, Lyra could see his throat work. Black Lunas only bond with Luna sovereigns of real finished. The rarest and most powerful of all wolf bloodlines. Females who can bear children by will alone, who command packs not through force, but through absolute authority, who are chosen by the moon itself to shepherd the wolf nations through times of change. She circled Theron slowly, and with each step, more frost spread. You felt it, didn't you? When you first met her. That pull, that recognition. Your wolf knew what your pride refused to accept, that she was your true mate. But more than that, she was your superior. No, Theron said, but his voice lacked conviction. She was Omega. She submitted to me. She submitted because Luna sovereigns don't manifest their power until they're ready, Avriel said coldly. Until they're challenged. Until they're forced to survive on their own strength. You felt threatened by the potential you sensed in her, so you manufactured evidence of barrenness and rejected her before she could eclipse you. The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Lyra watched Theron's face cycle through emotions, denial, anger, fear, and finally, a flicker of guilt that he quickly suppressed. These are lies, he said, but his voice wavered. Slander meant to disrupt my mating ceremony. Then let's test it, Lyra said quietly. She had been holding her power in check, keeping it leashed and hidden just as Avriel had taught her. But now, standing in the place where she'd been destroyed, facing the man who'd shattered her heart and stolen her future, she felt those chains break completely. Power flooded through her like moonlight through water. The chandeliers exploded with light, blazing so bright that wolves shielded their eyes. The windows rattled in their frames. The very air seemed to thicken with authority so profound that every wolf in the room, from the lowest Omega to the Alphas themselves, felt the instinctive urge to bow. Lyra's eyes, once a soft brown, now gleamed with silver light. Her hair lifted as if moved by an invisible wind. And around her, a corona of lunar energy materialized, translucent, beautiful, and terrifying. Luna's sovereign, someone gasped. Impossible. She's ascending. Right here, in front of everyone. Theron stumbled backward, his face ashen. His new Luna collapsed to her knees, unable to withstand the pressure of Lyra's aura. Around the ballroom, wolves were dropping to one knee, to both knees, bowing their heads in instinctive submission to a power they couldn't resist. Only Theron remained standing, and only because his own alpha power was fighting desperately against the pull to submit. You rejected me, Lyra said, and her voice echoed with the resonance of something far older than her 28 years. You severed our bond before it could fully form. You told the entire wolf nation that I was barren, broken, worthless. You cast me out to die in exile. She walked toward him, each step deliberate, and the crowd parted like water before a ship's prow. But I didn't die, Theron. I survived. And in surviving, I became what I was always meant to be. She stopped directly in front of him, meeting his eyes without fear. My sons are proof that the problem was never my womb. It was your bloodline, too weak, too deluded, too unworthy to father children with a Luna sovereign. That's not Theron started, but his voice cracked. They were born of my power alone, Lyra continued. Conceived by will, carried by determination, born into exile and raised in strength. They carry no father's bloodline because they needed none. They are pure Luna sovereign heirs, and they will grow to be more powerful than any alpha in this room. She turned to address the entire ballroom, her voice ringing clear. You invited me here to mock me, to parade your new Luna and remind me of my place. But you've made a critical error. You've given me a stage to reveal the truth, not just about me, but about all of you. Her gaze swept the crowd, and wolves flinched under that silver stare. How many other women have been cast aside because they didn't fit your narrow definitions? How many potential Luna sovereigns have been suppressed, rejected, destroyed before they could manifest their power? How many children have been denied their heritage because you feared what they might become? The silence that followed was deafening. Theron found his voice, though it came out strained. You speak of heritage and power, but what you're describing is chaos. The bloodlines have order for a reason. We cannot simply. Cannot what? Lyra demanded. Cannot accept that your precious hierarchy might be built on lies? That strength comes in forms you refuse to recognize. If every Omega claims to be a hidden Luna sovereign, not every Omega is of real interjected. True Luna sovereigns are born perhaps once every few centuries, but they're inevitably recognized by males who feel threatened by their potential. Males like you, Theron, who reject their true mates rather than risk being overshadowed. Theron's hands clenched into fists. Even if what you say is true, even if she is what you claim, my rejection was final. The bond was severed. She has no claim to my throne, my pack, I want nothing from you, Lyra said flatly. The power around her dimmed, became less oppressive, though no less present. I didn't come here to demand a place at your side. That opportunity died 5 years ago when you pushed me away. I came here to let you see exactly what you threw away. She gestured to her sons, who stood tall and proud, their golden eyes fixed on Theron with unsettling intensity. My sons will grow to be more powerful than you ever dreamed. They will challenge the old ways, not through rebellion, but through simple existence. And when they do, they will remember that their mother was strong enough to survive without you. Lyra turned to leave, her boys and her black Luna falling into step beside her. Wait. Theron's voice cracked like a whip. Lyra, wait. She paused, but didn't turn. If they're truly. He struggled with the words. If they carry imperial blood, even born of your power alone, they are the most valuable heirs in the wolf nation. The kingdom needs. Your kingdom will have its heirs, Lyra said, looking back over her shoulder. Assuming your new Luna can deliver what you demanded of me. But my sons. Her smile was cold. My sons belong to a different destiny. One you'll never be part of. You can't just walk away, Theron said, and now desperation crept into his voice. Those children, their power could stabilize the bloodlines, could. Could what? Lyra demanded, finally turning to face him fully. Could be used? Studied? Controlled? That's what you mean, isn't it? You don't want my sons out of love or even duty. You want them because they're powerful and you want to own that power. Theron's silence was damning. I thought so, Lyra said softly. You haven't changed at all. You still see wolves as resources rather than people. Power as something to be hoarded rather than honored. She felt Kale's small hand slip into hers, Darius on her other side. They radiated protectiveness, these fierce young wolves who had never known their father and never needed one. The mate bond is broken, Lyra continued. You severed it yourself. But more than that, I release you. I release any claim, any connection, any shadow of what we might have been. You are not my mate. You are not my king. You are simply the man who taught me that surviving your hatred was the greatest gift you could have given me. Avril stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing. A word of warning, Alpha King. The boy children of a Luna sovereign rejected by their father's bloodline? They will rise to challenge everything you've built. Not out of vengeance, but because it's their nature to stand where true power should have always been. Is that a threat? Theron demanded, some of his old arrogance returning. It's a prophecy, Avril replied. And unlike your healer's lies, this one will come true. Before anyone could respond, Avril dissolved into shadow, taking the boys with her in a display of power that left the ballroom gasping. Only Lyra remained visible for a moment longer, meeting Theron's eyes one final time. Goodbye, Theron, she said. I hope your new Luna brings you everything you deserve. Then she, too, vanished into shadow, following her black Luna and her children into the night. The ballroom erupted in chaos the moment Lyra disappeared. Wolves were shouting, arguing, some demanding action while others called for calm. The Council of Elders emerged from the crowd, their faces grave. Theron stood frozen on the ballroom floor, his new Luna weeping beside him, completely forgotten. Did you know? Elder Margrave demanded, his ancient face twisted with fury. Did you know she was Luna sovereign when you rejected her? No, Theron said, but his voice lacked conviction. I suspected something, but not that. Never that. You suspected and you rejected her anyway? Elder Cassandra, the eldest female, looked at him with something like disgust. You felt the potential of a true mate bond, one of the rarest blessings the moon can grant, and you severed it out of pride? She was Omega, Theron said weakly. She showed no signs. Luna sovereigns manifest in their own time, Cassandra snapped. Every child knows this. They are tested by adversity, forged by survival, revealed through necessity. You took a potential Luna sovereign and tried to break her. And she survived, Margrave added. Not only survived, she bore children without a mate. Do you understand how rare that is? How powerful she must be. Theron said nothing. He couldn't. His mind was reeling with implications he'd spent 5 years refusing to consider. Those children, another elder said. Imperial gold eyes. Born of pure Luna sovereign power. They could restore bloodlines that have been dying for centuries. They could unite the wolf nations under a new dynasty. If we can convince her to return, Cassandra said doubtfully, which seems unlikely given how we've treated her. How he treated her, Margrave corrected, glaring at Theron. The Alpha King who rejected his true mate and slandered her throughout the kingdom. Theron's new Luna, still kneeling on the floor, let out a sob. What about me? We're supposed to mate tonight. The ceremony is postponed, Cassandra said flatly. We have larger concerns than your wounded pride, child. As the elders argued and the crowd buzzed with speculation, Theron stood alone in the center of the ballroom and felt, for the first time in 5 years, the true weight of his mistake. He had rejected a Luna sovereign, his true mate, the mother of children who could have been the most powerful heirs in wolf history. And she wanted nothing to do with him. Miles from the palace, in a small clearing beneath the full moon, Avril materialized with her charges. They stood in a circle of ancient standing stones that hummed with residual power. Well, Avril said with a satisfied smile. That went better than expected. Lyra laughed, a genuine sound of relief and exhaustion. Did it? I half expected him to try to stop us. He couldn't, Avril said. Not with every elder and alpha in that room watching. Not after you revealed yourself. To restrain a manifested Luna sovereign? That would be a declaration of war against the moon itself. Kale and Darius were already shifting, their young bodies flowing between forms with ease. As small wolves, They bounded around the clearing, burning off nervous energy. Lyra watched them with a mixture of love and awe. What happens now? Will they come after us? Undoubtedly, Avril said. The council will send emissaries. They'll offer apologies, reparations, positions of honor. They'll beg you to return, to let your sons be integrated into the royal bloodlines, to take your rightful place in wolf society. And if I refuse? Then you refuse, Avril said simply. You are Luna's sovereign, Lyra. You don't answer to kings or councils. You answer only to the moon and your own conscience. Lyra sat on one of the standing stones, watching her sons play in the moonlight. I don't want revenge, she said quietly. I don't want to destroy Theron or take his throne. I just wanted him to see what he threw away, to know that his cruelty didn't break me. And he does, Avril assured her. That knowledge will haunt him far more than any punishment you could devise. Lyra nodded, feeling the truth of it. The look on Theron's face, the dawning realization of what he'd lost, had been worth every hardship of the past 5 years. What about the boys? She asked. When they're older, they'll want answers. About their heritage, about the Wolf Nation, about why they have no father. Then you'll tell them the truth, Avril said. That they were born of love, your love for them, your determination that they would exist despite every obstacle. That's more powerful than any father's bloodline could ever be. Cale trotted over in wolf form and shifted back to human, his young face serious. Mama, will the Bad King try to take us? Lyra pulled him close, then Darius, who had followed. No one will ever take you. I promise. We are family, you, me, and Avril. And family protects each other. Always, Darius agreed, his golden eyes glowing in the moonlight. As they sat together in the ancient circle, Lyra felt something shift inside her, the final remnants of the rejection bond dissolving like smoke. She was free. Not because Theron had released her, but because she had released herself. Where do we go now? She asked Avril. The Black Luna smiled mysteriously. Wherever a Luna sovereign wishes to go. The world is vast, and there are packs that would be honored to shelter you. Or you could carve out your own territory, start your own pack with your sons as the foundation of a new bloodline. My own pack, Lyra repeated, testing the idea. It felt right. Not hiding in the borderlands anymore, but building something new. Something better. A pack built on strength, yes, but also on acceptance, Avril said, reading her thoughts. Where power is recognized in all its forms, not just the ones that fit convenient hierarchies. Where being Omega or Luna or anything in between is simply acknowledged, not judged. A pack where no one is thrown away for being different, Lyra added. Exactly. As the moon climbed higher, they made plans. Not plans for revenge or conquest, but plans for building something worth protecting. A home. A future. A legacy that would outlast Theron's crumbling kingdom. 3 years passed. Lyra established her pack in the northern reaches, a territory that had been considered too wild, too harsh, too removed from civilization for traditional packs to claim. But for a Luna sovereign with a Black Luna as guardian and 2 rapidly growing alpha heirs, it was perfect. Wolves came to her. At first, a trickle Omegas cast out by their packs, lone wolves seeking purpose, families who'd been marginalized by the traditional hierarchy. Then a flood, as word spread of a pack where strength came in many forms, where leadership was earned rather than inherited, where the Luna sovereign judged wolves by their character rather than their bloodline. Within 3 years, Lyra's pack numbered over 200, and they were fiercely loyal. Cale and Darius, now 7 years old, were already showing leadership qualities that made visiting alphas nervous. They trained with warriors twice their size and age, studied strategy with Lyra, and learned shadow walking from Avril. They were being raised not as princes, but as protectors. It was on a winter evening, as snow fell soft and silent over their territory, that the delegation arrived. Lyra stood on the steps of her hall, a massive structure of timber and stone that her pack had built with their own hands, and watched the approaching party. She recognized the royal banners immediately. "He's come," she said to Avril, who stood beside her like a living shadow. "Not him," Avril corrected, "but his emissaries. The Council of Elders, by the look of those crests." Indeed, the delegation consisted of the three head elders, Margrave, Cassandra, and Thaddeus, along with a contingent of guards and advisors. They looked cold, travel-worn, and distinctly uncomfortable. Elder Cassandra stepped forward when they reached the hall, her ancient eyes sharp despite her age. "Luna Sovereign Lyra Moo Whisper. We come bearing messages from the Alpha King and the Wolf Council. You're welcome to warm yourselves by our fire," Lyra said with careful courtesy. "But I make no promises about the messages you carry." Once inside the great hall, with hot drinks served and the elders settled near the hearth, Cassandra spoke. "The Wolf Nation is in turmoil. In the 3 years since the winter solstice ball, 7 packs have fractured. 14 alphas have been challenged and defeated. The traditional power structures are collapsing." "And you blame me?" Lyra asked mildly. "We blame the truth you revealed," Margrave said bluntly. "You showed the Wolf Nation that Luna sovereigns exist, that the old bloodlines we thought extinct can be reborn, that power comes in forms we've been suppressing for centuries. Wolves are questioning everything now." "Good," Lyra said simply. The elders exchanged glances. Thaddeus cleared his throat. "The Alpha King. Theron, his mating to the other Luna failed. She could not bear his children. Their bond was incomplete, false. He rules alone now, and his position weakens daily." Lyra felt nothing at the news. No satisfaction, no pity. Just a distant acknowledgement of consequences. "That's unfortunate for him. But it's not my concern. He wishes to make amends," Cassandra said carefully. "He acknowledges his error in rejecting you. He would offer reparations, a place in the kingdom, recognition for your sons." "No," Lyra said flatly. "You haven't heard the full offer." "I don't need to," Lyra interrupted. "My sons and I have built something here. Something real, something honest, something that doesn't require us to pretend the past didn't happen. We're not interested in Theron's throne or his guilt or his political calculations. But your sons," Margrave pressed. "They carry imperial bloodlines. They could unite the Wolf Nations, bring stability. They could also have childhoods," Lyra countered, "without being used as political pawns. Without being forced into arranged matings to preserve bloodlines. Without growing up in a court that values them only for their genetic potential." She stood, and the power of her Luna sovereign nature filled the room like pressure before a storm. "I will say this once, and you will carry this message back to your council and your Alpha King. My sons are not available for your schemes. They will grow, train, and choose their own paths. If they decide to engage with the Wolf Nation's politics, it will be their choice, not mine, and certainly not yours." The elders sat in stunned silence. "As for me," Lyra continued, "I have everything I need here. A pack that chose me, children who love me, and a purpose that has nothing to do with Theron Ashcroft or his failing kingdom." Cassandra studied her for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "You truly don't want his throne." "I never did," Lyra said. "I wanted partnership, love, a family. When that was denied, I built those things myself. And what I've built is worth more than any crown." The elder nodded slowly. There's wisdom in that. She rose, the other elders following suit. We'll convey your message, though I suspect the political upheaval will continue regardless. Change always comes, of real said from the shadows. The question is whether you embrace it or are crushed by it. As the delegation prepared to leave, Kale and Darius appeared, having been training outside. They were covered in snow, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with youth and power. When they saw the royal banners, they moved to flank their mother protectively. Margrave stared at them with something like awe. They've grown strong. They've grown happy, Lyra corrected. Strong is just a consequence of that. The elders departed as the sun set, their party disappearing into the winter twilight. Lyra watched them go with her sons beside her and Avril at her back. Do you think Theron will accept your answer? Darius asked. He'll have to, Lyra said. I'm not the Omega he rejected anymore. I'm not even the woman who confronted him at the ball. I'm simply myself, finally and completely. And if he comes himself? Kale asked. If he demands. He can demand nothing, Avril interrupted gently. A Luna sovereign answers to no alpha, especially not one who severed his own mate bond. If he comes, we'll handle it. But I suspect he won't. His pride wouldn't survive another rejection. As they returned to the warmth of the hall, where their pack waited with dinner and laughter and the comfortable chaos of family, Lyra felt a deep sense of peace. The reckoning she'd gone to the ball seeking hadn't been about humiliating Theron. It had been about proving to herself that she'd survived, that she'd thrived, that his rejection hadn't defined her. And she had proven it. Kale and Darius were 12 when they first visited the Wolf Nation's capital on their own terms, not as children seeking approval, but as young alphas representing their mother's pack in treaty negotiations. They walked through the Crystal Palace with their heads high, their golden eyes taking in everything, their power preceding them like a herald. Wolves bowed instinctively as they passed. Elders whispered in their wake. And on his throne, older and wearier than he'd been 8 years ago, Alpha King Theron Ashcroft watched his sons, for he could no longer deny what they were, negotiate trade agreements and territorial boundaries with a wisdom beyond their years. He had never gotten to hold them, never taught them to hunt or fight or lead. They had grown into their power without him, and they were magnificent. When the negotiations concluded, Theron finally worked up the courage to approach them. You are remarkable, he said quietly. Your mother raised you well. Kale and Darius exchanged glances, then Kale spoke. She did. She taught us that strength without compassion is tyranny, that power without purpose is meaningless, and that family is built through loyalty, not blood. Will you? Theron swallowed hard. Will you ever forgive me? For not being there? Darius considered the question seriously. We don't know you well enough to forgive or condemn you. You're just the Alpha King to us. Nothing more, nothing less. But if you wish to earn our respect, Kale added, show us you've learned from your mistakes. Show us you can lead with the wisdom our mother displays every day. They left him standing in his throne room, and Theron realized that this was his punishment, not hatred or revenge, but irrelevance. He would never be their father. He had lost that right when he rejected their mother. Meanwhile, in the northern reaches, Lyra stood on her balcony watching the moon rise over her territory. Her pack was thriving. Her sons were growing into extraordinary wolves. And she was exactly who she'd always been meant to be. A Luna sovereign. A mother. A leader. Not because an Alpha King had chosen her, but because she had chosen herself. And that made all the difference.